Good evening, everyone. Welcome back. I know it's been a while. I was on the road. I was out in Nevada playing Pirate. That went really well, up to a bunch of other stuff. So, always walking the line between practitioner and theorist and teacher and doer. And so, I'm back now. Next week, I'll be back with another live episode of Every Day is a Story All Its Own. Then, of course, Thanksgiving night falls on a Thursday, so we never do a show. Then we'll do a replay, probably another Into the Outer Realms episode with my beautiful co-host Tanya. In anticipation of after the first of the year, Tanya's going to be doing some live shows with me again. I know a lot of people are really excited about that. I also have a number of guests lined up or in the process from all walks of life. Really, really cool stuff. A couple of returning guests, a couple of brand new guests. So that's all going to be very exciting, covering all the different parts of my life. And I know sometimes people get a little confused about, oh, what is this about? Because it's Into the Outer Realms and it's Every Day is a Story All Its Own. It's Saturday morning story time. I really have just come to say that I am a storyteller. And that is what is the same across all the different boards. I miss Tanya being on the show. I think a lot of everyone does. So it's really exciting that she'll be here. She's here doing her art. And she'll be on the road with me next year as I'm doing my Cyrus Avery stuff, wearing my Tulsa, Oklahoma hat today. Home of Cyrus Avery, father of the Mother Road. Route 66, the Mother Road, Main Street of America, turned 99 years old. The old girl, the old boy, however you see the route, all 2,400 or so miles of it. And then we're gearing up now for the centennial, which is all very exciting. So I'll be telling you about that and the tour and all the good stuff going on. So, yeah, we'll have to try to get Reverend Carter back on the show again. It's been a while. Well, I'll have to reach out to our good friend and see if we can make that happen. Anyway, let's roll the opening, all 11 or 13 seconds of it. We'll come back and we're going to talk about The Gap. All right, just as simple as that. Music by Knight Berman Jr., who was on the show, popular guest a couple months ago, which was wonderful, something to check off my bucket list, and hopefully we'll have Knight on again in the future. All of these episodes, Every Day is a Story All Its Own, of course, based in part, and vice versa, I guess you could say, of my book, former Amazon new release bestseller in a number of categories. Every Day is a Story All Its Own, a triadic approach to the storyteller's craft, where I really mix my spiritual background, philosophical background, if you will, social conscious background, with my storytelling background, which, as you all know, has many, many modes to it. So I've talked about this subject, a little bit around this subject, alluded to this subject in quite a few shows because it's really important. It was finally time to do it. Next week, I'm going to do a how-to show, another creative communication about building compelling, lasting characters that will help you tell the best stories that you can tell. So this is a little bit of a precursor to that, sometime in December or January, depending on when some of the people I'm in the process of scheduling can be a guest on the show. I'm also going to do linking theme with character. No show where it's just theme, because theme is a means to an end, as I'll talk about. So The Gap, what is The Gap? The title of tonight's episode is Living, Writing, Acting, and Thriving in the Gap. So if you're not a creative per se, and Tanya says that all of us have intuitive powers to agree, all of us are creative or creatives to a degree. You will still find a lot of value, I think, in this episode. Some of the quotes I'm going to share, some of the things that I'm going to draw on, and get you thinking a little bit about how this whole idea of the gap works in our life all the time, even though maybe we don't call it such. So let's start with a definition from Merriam-Webster. It's an opening or an empty space. I love that. One of the seminal books that I talk about all the time. I talk about it and quote from it at length in Every Day is a Story All Its Own, is Peter Brook's The Empty Space. It is also a break in continuity, like a hiatus. for instance, a gap year, which some people do between high school and college, or undergraduate degree and graduate degree, so on and so forth. A wide difference or disparity, as in a generation gap. We all are experiencing that all day, every day. Communication gap, again, we're all experiencing that all day, every day. As I say, since 9/11, we are mourning the death of communication. It has been way too long of an era, over a generation now, of confrontation rather than communication. Perhaps some of these concepts of the gap will help us improve some of those situations. I always remain humbly hopeful, but keep showing up on Thursday nights and try to do my part. Also, a mountain pass or a ravine, which is nice. Place, location, setting, so powerful. So to have that geographical image of going down, I've read so many Louis L'Amour's. I'm reading the first book in the 4-part Lonesome Dove series by Larry McMurtry. I love the old westerns to read, especially before I go to bed. A mountain pass or a ravine, go into the gap. Think of the Cumberland Gap, famous in a number of really great songs. I'm going to draw on Brene Brown, of course. Really got me turned on, and practicing authenticity, always practicing it, trying to get it right. But Brene Brown says, mining the gap, the space between where we're actually standing and where we want to be. And that's what's key, especially for storytellers. That gap, the space between where we're actually standing and where we want to be. Now, experimental psychologist, cognitive scientist, and linguist Steven Pinker, in a terrific book called The Blank Slate, writes that people who acknowledge a discrepancy between a goal and the current state of the world execute operations that tend to reduce the distance. And again, I remain humbly hopeful that somehow maybe I'm reducing the distance. Reducing some of these gaps, communication gaps, generational gaps, so on and so forth, through the work that I'm doing. But I'll keep showing up regardless of whether I know that for sure or not. And that's part of it too. We just keep going. So again, what is the gap between where you are and where you want to be? In storytelling terms, in life terms, this is about goals, aspirations, and motivations. I'm here. I want to be there. How the heck do I get there? In story terms, Robert McKee, the great screenwriting guru, calls the gap the area between expectation and result. I love that. When I was revisiting as I was preparing for the show tonight, and saw that so powerful between expectation. So we don't only have a dream, we have an expectation of it coming true and what it's going to look like when it comes true. From a spiritual perspective, again, this is dangerous territory. Expectation is very dangerous when you think of Buddhism, Zen, other Eastern philosophies like that. Expectation is a road of glass and thorns, as I'm wont to say. But expectation, they used to ask us, I don't even know if it matters anymore, because the world is moving so quickly and it's so uncertain with technology and the work world, let's put it that way, changing all the time. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? The question really was, what are your expectations for yourself? A prospective employer is asking, what are our expectations for you based on what you want to accomplish? If you just want to be in the same job and accrue your vacation and kind of phone it in, not come on in on Saturdays or ever stay extra, we're going to have low expectations of you. Now, in the modern workforce, with all these global elites, the Silval bully boys and all that, the expectation is ridiculous. Work life balance is for losers. Forget about 60 hours. You got to do 80 hours. Me personally, I work about 70, 75 hours a week, but so much of my work is play. And that is a decision that I make. That is my expectation of me. I no longer ask myself, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I'm more like, when I sit down at the computer around 6 o'clock in the morning to start my workday, where do you see yourself at the end of this day? And hopefully, just with the boxes on the to-do list all checked off, through the result of focus, concentration, and good hard work. So, where do you see yourself in 5 years? That is the gap. The gap is 5 years between where you stand right now, and at the end of those 5 years, you had to look back and see at the beginning of college, where do you see yourself in 4 years with a degree and going out into a job where I graduated in 1990. So if you were offered your age, $21,000 a year as a starting salary, you knew you were off to a good start. So much has changed now, but the gap still remains. Um, Another way to think of this in the gap is, what do we lack? What are we missing? What is our characters missing? Because that's really important. Because lack is something, in a lot of ways, it was manufactured for a really long time for political expediency. That if that guy over there has something, that means you can have it. Again, in spiritual sense, if we think of Wayne Dyer and folks in that, where we live in an infinite universe, that guy over there, and this is very Deepak Chopra, that guy over there can have a great abundance, and you can still have great abundance as well. They have dragged that nightmare into reality, to co-opt a line from Rush and change it a little, drag the dream into existence, drag the nightmare into reality, where there truly is lack. And there are lots of people that are suffering, and the gap is wide. Where are the gaps wide? Between communication, generation, the wealth gap, the earning gap, the access to good healthcare gap, all of these different gaps. Education is really under fire, higher education, and I do believe that adjustments have to be made there. But an education gap, these are very pressing and they're very compelling, and we see them showing up in our storytelling all the time. I see that the comments are stacking up. I will get to them, I promise. Let me get a little further into this first. The gap, because of lack, because of expectation, the gap signals discontent. Discontent can really be a serious motivator. If we're content, we might be passive. That is a check that I do on myself every once in a while, and it's a really fine line. Are you content? Content, I think, is a matter of degrees. It's not a fixed, static position, and so we can be discontented and be contented at the same time on different levels or in different areas of our life. Hopefully, we're not discontented in all areas of my life. My marriage, for instance, I am very content, but I am still working on it. The gaps are smaller than they've ever been, and that's a victory. So that's how that works there. The gap signals discontent, the desire for more with a capital M, more success, more money, more love, more adventure. But then we can get into some less material things, more understanding, more peace, more harmony, more communication. Gap also works with theme. And again, I don't talk about theme a lot. Theme, arcs, spine, super objective. What is that story about? What are we using the characters to illuminate? What are we trying to say about dyads, about the state of the world, where there are gaps and how we think we can close them, overcome them? There is a gap in every dyad. So think about it. Dyads have these extremes, the ultra left and the ultra right, and in the middle is this gap. They are not going to come together, but there are millions upon millions upon millions of people in this country that reside in that gap, and most of us feel like we are not being spoken to, we are spoken at, we are spoken of, we are spoken in spite of, or not spoken to. So there you go. So that is really important. I talk about dyads all the time. Talk about the triadic approach to the storyteller's craft. And of course, people say, well, what is that? What is the triadic? It's the idea that there is a third thing that can mediate, can join, moderate, mediate, transform, alchemicalize, the dyad and turn it into something useful. When I do the episode on character and theme and how they're linked, we're going to talk a lot about dyads. We're going to talk about the character continuum, where you have the very rich and you have the very poor. You have the warhawk and you have the peacenik. You have the light and you have the dark. You have the good. You have the evil. You have the familiar and the absolutely foreign. You have the ordinary and non-ordinary, but life is lived in the middle, and it is a dance between those extremes. So we need to learn to dance in the gap. We can't always close it. Some gaps are not closable. We're always going to have those dyads. I think with our tripartite brain and the way that we reduce things and tend to other, all those kinds of things, it is a reality. The gap also comes up in quantum physics and neuroscience, another big element of this book. Anything that makes me a better storyteller, a better teacher, better actor, better director, better writer, editor, story analyst, so on and so forth, immersive experience designer, goes in the toolbox. And there's a lot to be learned from quantum physics. The ultimate gap, and this came to me this afternoon, I was kind of in the liminal zone. I was reading, I was comfortable. I'm a little under the weather. I hope I don't sound too stuffed up and annoying tonight, trying to get over a bad cold on the road after spending so much time at home. The immune system's down. I guess it was bound to happen. I got my beautiful bride sick, which I apologize for. But the ultimate gap in quantum physics to me is Schrodinger's cat. That is the place where the cat is simultaneously alive and dead. The gap is the place of that rich alchemical possibility. And it really got me thinking about wave probabilities, right? Waves come up and they start to collapse, and what is left becomes that particle, becomes the reality. So like manifestation of any kind has to do with those wave particles collapsing until they get to a pure particle state where that is reality, so to speak, or the reality that we're going into. This is also the place of infinite possibilities. So the gap is really, and this is what I do say almost every episode, the gap is where creatives make their money. The gap is where storytellers truly reach and hopefully affect their audiences. So attached to that, ritual is a means of bridging dyads and the liminal or sacred space. So that gap, like I said, number one definition, according to Merriam-Webster, which was cool, was an opening or an empty space. This gap, this area, this alchemical soup, this negredo, for those of you who know some things about alchemy. So ritual is a means of doing that. Storytelling is ritual. Theater is all about ritual. There's a lot of what I talk about in this book here is ritual as opposed to spectacle. And I've done an episode on that, ritual versus spectacle. We are seeing a lot of spectacle. The tearing down of the East Wing of the White House, that was spectacle. That was absolutely spectacle. It was outsized. It was meant to show power, disregard for the past, supplanting of the past, a very materialistic vision of the future, where you need a giant ballroom that'll hold 300 people or whatever the heck because you're a king or whatnot. All of that. If I'm offending anybody, sorry. These are times where we need to speak our minds and we need to let the chips fall. So through that ritual, what we're really doing is we're incorporating liminal or dream spaces into storytelling. That residing in that good alchemical soup of the gap is very much a dream place. It's that infamous possibility space. It's the wave probability space. It's good bubbling cauldrony kind of stuff. It's actually quite wonderful. And this is a powerful mechanism for bridging the gap between ordinary and non-ordinary reality. That's what's interesting. To close the gap, we need to go into non-ordinary reality. Classic hero's journey, answer the call to adventure, go into this liminal space, go into this dream space, go into this non-ordinary world. If you really want to understand story-wise how this looks in a very concrete way, because it's a fable, it's a fairy tale, you could do no worse than Guillermo del Toro's Pan's Labyrinth. It is that little crossing over into the non-ordinary world, which I write about in my latest novel, Mothman Was Here, crossing over into what the TNT zone is. Anybody Mothman TNT area, Point Pleasant, West Virginia aficionados will know what I am talking about when I talk about that. Now, there's another gap, a very big kind of spiritual gap. Being a Roman Catholic, we knew it as purgatory, the purgatorio in Dante terms, this place where you wait out your sentence, you right your wrongs, and it's decided you're probably not going to go to hell if you're in purgatory, unless you really, really kind of screw something up in purgatory. But you're mostly just sitting and you're paying your dues and you're waiting out your time so you can get into heaven. The Tibetan Buddhist term for the gap is the bardo. It's a wonderful word, the bardo, which is defined as the interval or intermediate state between thoughts, experiences, or lives. This is wonderful. This encapsulates everything in terms of the gap between thoughts, silence, or pause as a gap, a very fruitful gap. That's the sacred om in mantra, in Sanskrit, in acting terms, theater terms. The pause is not nothing. Sanford Meisner, very, very wise. Sometimes we need to take a pause. I have a gap right now between where I am and where I would like to be with something in my life that could be extremely life changing. It could be the culmination of 16 years of showing up, work, creating, creativity, networking, business. But I was recently told through several different mechanisms, people trying to help me out as I navigate this, that I need to be patient, that I need to take a pause. I need to let it unfold. So the gap exists now for a reason, but it's really, really hard. I do not like ambiguity. I do not like inaction. I do not like a dead calm. I like the wind in the sails, but sometimes we have to do that. And while we're in the pause, we can still be creating. And that's what I was told. Let this very concrete thing, this journey that is unfolding at its own pace, with things that are out of your control, and although they relate to you, really in some ways have nothing to do with you, you still need to be creating. You still need to be creative, and you need to be primal in your creativity, which was wonderful. It was a wonderful idea. Well, alchemy in the gap is a catalyst for the ripple effect. And that's why that works. That's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to keep showing up, concentrating, and creating my work and putting my work out into the world, what I am working on out into the world, because that helps to close the gap. People see what you're working on. They see that you have things going on. And before you know it, more stuff comes in. So as I'm wont to say, and nothing succeeds like success. And that's obviously not my quote. So again, in that bardo space, if you feel like there's this gap and you're not making progress, think of different kinds of progress. Think of your own maturity. Think that maybe you're not ready for what's coming. And that's why the wave possibilities aren't collapsing, right? Everything for our highest good. When a student or a friend or a mentee comes to me and says, "Oh, I really want this happen. This is in process. This could be great. This is going to close my gap." I always say, for your highest good. And hopefully what I would like to happen, that's going to happen. But in the meantime, we're working in the gap. Well, I'm at the turn of the material, a few minutes early from the hour. So let's go into the comments here. So, a good friend of the show, Ron, and you can watch, you can listen to the show Wednesday nights, 10 p.m. every Wednesday, even if there are holidays or whatever that week. We'll play an archive ERT Radio. Ronald, our good friend, supporter of the show, supporter of my novel, supporter of me, having me as a guest on his show. Am I in the gap in a big house in the desert? You are. The desert is a very, very interesting gap. People need to cross it. It works like the Amazon, any kind of exploration thing. It goes back to that definition of the mountain crevice or pass. That was a wonderful question. So you're not running out of time question at all. So there you go. So and welcome to everyone else who's joined us today. Moonkid, hello, nice to see you. So here we go. Let's go back to the turn here. So let's start to talk in terms of character motivation. Good actors, good directors, good writers don't like to talk about motivation. You don't need to. You're talking about other things. You're talking about wants and needs, but what you're really talking about is the gap. So if a character is perfectly content, they're perfectly happy, everything is going swimmingly, there really is no gap between where they are and where they want to be, there's no story. There's no story. Uh, there's a nice example. Hey, there's a guy who's really content, he's happy in his life, but is that person stretching themselves? I used to do in the 90s and into the mid 2000s. I used to speak quite often at my alma mater, Arcadia University, to students and at a career networking luncheon, mentoring students and all. If you're getting there too quickly, if the gap is too small, you're not pressing yourself hard enough. My life has been a very crooked road, as they say in Joe versus the Volcano, the great script by John Patrick Shanley, closing the gap as character motivation. So let's talk about that. The inciting incident in a story, that thing that changes everything. You thought you were content or you were really restless, but you didn't know what to do about it and you didn't have a clue. You're very much in the ordinary workaday world. So the opening frame might be a montage of this person riding the subway in New York, getting hassled, going to their office, getting hassled, going home, getting hassled, trying to get into their apartment, going up into their apartment, absolutely exhausted, discontented, and getting up and doing it day after day after day after day. Something happens, an inciting incident. In Joe versus the Volcano, he finds out he's got a terminal illness. And so everything has changed. And it's a very different kind of gap between here I am still living and soon I'm going to be dead. And what do I want that to look like? Ron, he doesn't cross a desert. He crosses water to a small Polynesian island. This inciting incident, it creates the gap. It pushes us into the non-ordinary world where we are the stranger in the strange land. It's the letter that comes that the parent who we haven't seen in forever has died, and now we have to deal with it. That's Elizabethtown with Orlando Bloom. Or someone we didn't know existed or we thought was dead is actually alive. I'm reading Tale of Two Cities again for the first time in decades, and where the old doctor who was imprisoned is recalled to life. That's the inciting incident there that gets us off to the races. It produces a new goal. It also produces a lot of confusion, but what it offers is a lot of wave probabilities because we don't know what the hell we're doing. That's why we're the stranger in the strange land. We don't know what the rules are. We don't know what the expectations are for us. So it's hard for us to have expectations, right? If you are so lost, you're so in a situation that you have no idea what's expected of you, it's hard, really hard for you to have expectations of everyone and everything else. And that is why the gap is so darn story rich, which this first half hour of the show is really what I'm impressing upon you. In our lives, that is rich. That's where life is lived. That's where we can practice authenticity to get ourselves through. Go back again to the word that Robert McKee, the screenwriting teacher, talks about: expectation. Here out there across the gap, across the desert, across the big wide sea is a result. What is that result going to be? Why is the gap so story rich? Because the disappointment that we experience when the outcome is not what we thought it would be or not equal to the time, effort, and money expended can be painful. It is probably the most cutting, harmful, lasting, deepest cutting um, pain, mental, emotional, that there is. There's physical pains that are a lot worse when we don't meet expectations. That's not getting into the college that you wanted to get into. That's not getting the job promotion. That's asking someone to marry you and they say, no, 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 I have no intention. That was never about this. That expectation creates so much pain, that disappointment, and that is why the gap in storytelling is so rich. I show up and I expect something to happen. My mistake, but I do it. I'm human. And when it doesn't happen, man, I am disappointed. My expectations were not met. I, in the process, somehow disappointed other people's expectations. We all feel that, even if we say that we don't, we do. We don't want to let people down, not our children, not our spouses, not our workers, not the person who's beside us in the trenches every day. Um, our audiences as creatives, we don't want to let them down, because they will let us know when we have done so. So, in this idea of expectation, of crossing the gap, of going from where you are to where you want to be, you have to ask some fundamental questions. And if we have good mentors, if we have people who are either really, really looking out for us, who are or who are just wise enough to know that this is a fool's errand, if you don't ask these questions, if you don't know, um, what is the character willing to do to get what they want? Now that's that whole journey. That's that whole great problem solving middle. That's that great act 2 thorny desert, forest, ocean that we're trying to nurture what happened in act 1. Anyone can write a good act 1. And the longer that I am doing what I'm doing as a writer, as a teacher, as a mentor, as a story analyst, as a story doctor, the more I believe that anybody can write a good act 1, but it's nurturing that. It's leading it through the gap, taking it on the journey with you and see what's going to happen through the expectations, through the chance of disappointment. What are you willing to do to get what you want? I think why stories of well, first of all, stories where people overcome great obstacles um are stories where they are willing to almost do anything. Not in a moral sense, but oftentimes in a physical sense. Frodo is that way. He is so exhausted. He is so worn out, he is so drained by that ring. By the time he gets to the top of Mount Doom, man, we feel for him. And Sam has been drained. And other characters have echoes of that. I think that Aragorn has a little bit of that. But Frodo, man, in Lord of the Rings, he has so much of that when he's up. What are you willing to do? You don't know. And sometimes when you know what's going to be asked for from you, you would say no. So you have to learn it in process. You can't, and people will say that, and it's amazing. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. This could be a great, great learning experience. It is the gap at its richest, at its best, at its most valuable. But think about it going in. What are you willing to do? And I know, excuse me, I know that the older I get, there are just places I am not going to go personally, professionally, and otherwise. It's not that I'm afraid of them. I understand them. I've been there. I may be, ironically, more equipped to handle them. But where I want to go, I'm not willing to do that to get there. So sometimes, what do? We temper our expectations. I mean, it's all over in the language. It's all over the place. As Joe Campbell would say, it's all over the place. We temper our expectations. Some people see that as a bad thing. I think when you're in your 20s, even into your 30s, go for it, man. Have high expectations. Be willing to screw up. There are times to reset. But as we get older, it's not even that time is more precious. It's just that we've learned and we have a better idea of what those expectations are. We have tempered some of them, more realistic. Oh, those are unrealistic expectations. You can put all kinds of great adjectives that really make this gap work sing out front there, and you really should do that. So what are you willing to do to get what you want or to close the gap? We refer to that as stakes. So, as directors, as writing teachers and mentors, raise the stakes. That's what we say to actors. That's what we say to writers. Raise the stakes. The expectation should be super high. Frodo is not trying to move to a new city and maybe get married and get a better paying job. That is not the expectation here. He is a little dude taken out of his world, stranger in a strange land, 100%, taken out of the Shire, thrown into these horrific places, seeing carnage and battles and dark towers and places of death and the helm and all of this kind of stuff, and inside the mountain. And the expectation is he's going to save the world. He's going to save Middle Earth. Holy crap. That's heavy. And that's why those stories are so instructive. That's why some of the things that Samwise says, some of the things that Gandalf, I'm seeing them posted a lot in the times that we're living in, and it warms my heart. I grew up on those stories, and they're wonderful. So revisit those quotes and maybe post some of them yourself. People will absolutely appreciate it. Now, what is a character willing to do to get what they want or close the gap? That is the stakes. That is high expectations. That is, I am all in. Well, what will happen if they don't get it, either now or further on in the story? Again, this is process. We can always get back up again. There are rounds in boxing. So Rocky, from the first bell to either a knockout or a victory or a technical knockout, that is the gap. That series of rounds, that third act of Rocky, right? The second half of the second act and into the third act of Rocky, that is the gap there. What will happen if they do not get it? What are the consequences? Well, if Middle Earth isn't saved, it's going to be taken over by Saruman with all these, with the Uruk-hai and all the rest of that stuff, and bad stuff is going to happen. A lot of people are going to be slaughtered and subjugated, so on and so forth. We live right now in a time where the consequences are very high. So I think our personal expectations for ourselves need to be equally high if we're going to make a difference. And that is not everybody's responsibility. I talk to a lot of creatives and they say, does my art, does all my creativity have to go into these socio-political, so on and so forth? No, just make art and keep your vibration high. And that's your expectation. And that's good. But then, we have Martin Luther King Jr. If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. But I think that there's lots and lots of ways to be part of the solution. And we all come where we're called. Our authenticity takes, our authenticity takes, a lot of different ways. Manifest a lot. Sorry, I'm trying to read for so Ronald asked the question, do you get your ideas for your books from thought, or is it an experience that you come across? Is a lot of different things. It's research, it's my own life experience, it's stories that I gather along the way. I'm not only a teller of stories, but I'm a collector of stories. So people inspire me all the time with their stories. I love to hear people's stories in an airport or especially, well, no, I pretty much keep to myself when I'm just myself. But I was just in Nevada doing the pirate thing, and I felt confident in who I was. And I'm a storyteller, and I'm doing well, and the show was well received. And so I will hear people's stories. I will ask them about themselves and listen to their stories, and I will share some of my stories. Some of it comes from research, uh, the experiences. Some are the thoughts that come unbidden, which I believe is a line from Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So, what will happen if they don't get it? So the higher the expectations, the more they're willing to go for it. They want it so badly to get where they need to be. The higher the risk, the higher the consequences, the higher the stakes. And that is real good storytelling. You all know that. So, how do we close the gaps in our stories? Well, we can use flashbacks, we can use montage, we can use backstory, we can use origin stories to give clues. So that's a partial way that you can do it. Seeing it through is the only way, right? Macbeth, it's like I'm so far steeped in blood that going forward is going to be better than going back. That's just like where we are. So you got to see it through. Once you're in, you're all in. Although the character will have doubts, and that's David Mamet's three uses of the knife, which I've taught. It's in this book. But anyway, you can use flashbacks because those will illuminate the wants, needs, where somebody went off the track, where they failed to meet expectations. There are beautiful stories where someone got punched in the face so hard that they're hiding away from life. Again, Joe versus the volcano. Joe has such horrible experiences as a firefighter that he's hiding away in this terrible job in this little crappy apartment. He's lost all his expectation for life. He's lost all his fire. He's living absolutely inauthentically. And if there's anyone that I ever want to help in my travels, my mentorship, it is someone who's not living authentically because they've been knocked down so hard. They're just pure afraid. That is a good way. So if you find people like that, find ways to help them, to apply your own authenticity, some of your own courage to help them get over those punches in the face. It also helps the gap there, fills gaps with action and conflict, which is what I'm really talking about here. Once you're in it, you're all the way in it. And those are the obstacles that come up. The hero takes two steps back. He gets knocked on his ass. Oh, he gets up. He shakes it off. He doesn't know. Then there's that moment. There are great moments. Some of the greatest moments in the Rocky films are where Rocky gets knocked down and we don't know if he's going to get back up. It's physical and it's mental. And that's really the dance here, right? It's just like the episode that I did, the last live episode that I did 3 or 4 weeks ago, analytical and intuitive. It's a dance, man. It's never or. It's physical, it's mental. And that's the combination. For Frodo, it's physical and it's mental. It's deeply psychological because the effect of the ring, that the effect that the ring is having on him. So anytime we don't know and we're screaming at the screen, get up, man, get up, don't stay down. That's powerful. My eyes are filling up with tears here because that's it. When we're rooting for that hero, we're rooting for ourselves. And that is kudos to a great storyteller who can get us to root for ourselves, to get us to reassess our own lives through watching, through that empathy, that powerful, powerful word. The night that I did the very unexpectedly emotional show, and thanks to everyone who's watched it and given me positive feedback on it, with everything that was going on, is this idea: get back up, get back in it, don't give up, and share empathy. Empathy is a superpower. Don't let the Silval bully boys and these other elites try to trick you. They know better. They know better. They're lying to you. They're playing with you. They're gaslighting you when they say that empathy is going to ruin civilization. No, I said it before. I'm going to say it again, and then I'm going to move back on to finish this up and be done within an hour's time span. understanding where someone is coming from, understanding what the hell happened to them and their gaps, that's powerful. We don't have to agree with them. We don't have to align with them. We don't have to support them. We don't have to reward them. But empathy, it's so key and integral with authenticity. You can't be authentic if you don't have empathy. If you don't understand where people are coming from, how the power of what goes on in the gap, how people's broken expectations. They wanted it so badly and they didn't get it. Disappointment that's completely overwhelming. That causes a gap in the soul. And that's what I think we're seeing with the kind of people who say that empathy is a danger. Uh, there's a gap miles wide in their souls. Thank you, Ron. I appreciate it. I never know what these episodes are going to yield. So thank you for that. Gap filling is the reward of true stories. And I talked about this in the true story episode, but it bears saying again, so I brought it back in here. Is there a period, now this is for writers especially, is there a period in the person's life that's unknown? Think about those 18 years or so between Jesus's temple experience when he was 12 and then his re-emergence as 30. There's been all kinds of Jesus in India and all the different things, and traveling with Joseph of Aramea, all really rich story fodder. That's because there's a gap there. I've talked about it before. Charles Vane, a pirate character that I play, I designed an entire escape room around him because it was interesting. As I was doing my pirate research, he was arrested for piracy in the Caribbean in 1719, and he spent a full year in prison before he was hung. That is very unusual. What the hell happened in that year? What could have happened? And it's yielded a lot of good fruit for me. And the sixth and seventh books of the seven book Cannon and the Quill series, which I've put aside for the time being as I'm working on the second Mothman book, that's all about that gap year, so to speak, for Vane. Again, a little bit of this here before we get back into some new stuff to end the episode. Vice by Adam McKay about Dick Cheney, who recently passed away. Highly stylized storytelling fills the gaps in the life of the secret Dick Cheney. What the hell was he doing when he was there, and what was going on at that time? That is the storyteller's fodder, man. Again, that is the reward in telling true stories. The Terror, based on Dan Simmons' book, who's a master of filling gaps, and he fills them with the paranormal. I tend to do that as well in the Stanton Chronicles and in other works that I do. Another Dan Simmons tale, Drood, is a brilliant take on the last months of Charles Dickens' life, where there is a lot of mystery and what was going on. And Dan Simmons, it's a great big doorstop of a book. You could really damage someone hurling this book at them. But don't do that. Don't do that. And don't use it as a doorstop, but read it. It's wonderful. Drood by Dan Simmons. The Conjuring films, the Warrens, Blumhouse. I talked about this. There's a new one out, The Last Rites. We have no idea. These people were liars, fabricators, exaggerators, disinformation specialists. Ed, more and more information is coming out that he was kind of a reprehensible person, draped in the trappings of being a demonologist through the Roman Catholic Church. So Blumhouse, good on them. If it's all lie and fabrication and all of that, an interesting handling of the gap, and I just think about it now, is Tim Burton's Big Fish, right? Fish stories are gap fillers. I didn't accomplish that much, but in my mind, I did. In my imagination, I have. And that's how I fill the gap with stories. So there you go. There's another came there. Pastiches about Sherlock Holmes's time away. the year or so, a little more than a year, I believe it is, after the fall from Reichenbach Falls, when everyone thinks he's dead. For those of you who don't know, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle wanted to write about other things. He was totally sick of Sherlock Holmes, so he killed him. And public outcry, publisher outcry, and Doyle's purse were screaming so loud that he had to bring him back to life. He never really talked about what happened there, but I have a couple of great books on my bookshelf of what he was up to during that time. Really, really rich material. We also have all mysteries and thrillers have a gap between this was done and the reveal of who the heck did it. And we know we love all of that kind of stuff. Agatha Christie, so on and so forth. It's at the heart of all of my escape rooms, so many of my books, mystery thriller kind of material. Also, there are memory gaps, which is a wonderful device for writers. Excuse me, again, if you're thinking of doing a piece with memory gap, watch Christopher Nolan's Memento. Man, that is some good stuff. And you will learn about the necessity of structuring, analytical mind, outlining, all of that kind of really good stuff. How do we fill the gap for the actor? A couple weeks ago, I was actually home in between Nevada and a road trip that I took to New Jersey for personal reasons. And I was a guest speaker. Excuse me. I really do apologize. I'm going to try to finish this up before my voice gives out. I was a guest speaker for Chapman University. Thank you, Drew Chappell, Professor Drew Chappell, for inviting me in to speak to the students. And they had a lot of questions about the journey as an actor. I'm an old guy now. I've been doing this for 35 years professionally, but I've been doing it, most of my life, since I was 8 years old, otherwise, writing since I was probably 10 or 11. So the less distance between the actor and the character, the better. Now, we aren't the characters that we play. Not really, but there are ways that we can do this. Also, too, for writers, write what you know. That just means reduce the gap between who you are and who those characters are. This is about finding common ground. And this is really the as if. Play it as if this was going on. I read a really cool thing. I'm reading Al Pacino's biography, Sonny Boy. I cannot recommend this book enough. If you love Al Pacino, read it. If you're an actor, read it. Pacino is so wonderful. Everything we've seen between the lines in the fairly rare, although now that he's older, he does more interviews. All that we've seen between the lines is really there. It's beautiful. But he talks about how one of the Barrymores has to kill his brother on screen. And they always said to him, like, how could you do it? Like, how could you get up to kill your own brother? And he said, it was easy. I hated the smell of his hair cream. That's an as if. Play the scene as if the smell of that hair cream was so detestable to you that you could murder the person who is wearing it. So that's a really good demonstration. I just read that maybe an hour and a half ago, and I was like, thank you for this gift, for this synchronicity. So we need to keep in mind, how does an actor do that? How does that mechanism work? How do we apply that as if? Well, I really do apologize, folks. An actor offers a unique interpretation. And I have quoted in the past, and I quote them in my book here, Sam Rockwell and Philip Seymour Hoffman playing Chuck Barris in Confessions of a Dangerous Mind and playing Truman Capote. I am an actor playing a version of that person. People like Truman Capote were playing a version of themselves. So it's these nested personalities, these nested realities of who this person is. If you remember that, that is very easy. You are not this person. You are playing an interpretation of them. Whatever gets you there, use the script by all means. Use the words. take the direction, take cues from your fellow actors, be active listeners, do all of that. But at some point, if you need that as if, oh man, I got to do this horrific thing. I don't know how to do it, but I swear if I have to smell that hair cream one more time, whatever gets you through the night, it's great. Pacino was talking about some of those things, and he said, I don't like to talk about my secrets, but people want to know. He's at the point now where he's putting out an autobiography. He's showing you how he made some of the sausage, and it's really nice to see those things. But the best actors don't talk about their as ifs. They just play them. And if they're really not working, then they'll go and they'll seek help to arrive at an as if. So the actor offers a unique interpretation. This is an amalgam of the author's words. I truly believe that. I'm right there with Mamet as a fellow playwright. It's all there in the script. Pacino didn't want to return for Godfather 2 because there wasn't a script yet. And that's always a journey. The writer's words have to be there, and they have to be there solid. You also need a director that you trust that has a vision. The energy intent of the other actors, and for a live presentation, the audience, they are giving you motivations. They are giving you energies through their expectations. That's the gap too. Audience pays a lot of money to sit down in a seat. They're investing their time. They've driven there after work. They have an expectation. And the gap between the curtain rising and the curtain closing, the gap between the opening credits in a film and the closing credits of a film, it could be really dangerous and exhausting. The expectations just get exponentially higher in long form drama. Tanya and I will leave out what it was, because all of this is subjective, and I don't want to use my position here in any kind of way to try to influence anybody. There was a show that we were really excited to watch, a recent long-form narrative, and man, the first 3 episodes were awesome. At the turn, it started to sour a little. The 5th episode and the 6th episode were terrible. Absolutely terrible. Our expectations were not at all met. So the gap between, that's 6 hours of our life over, I think we did it in 3 nights. I think we did 2, 2, and 2. But anyway, all of that stuff, the writer's words, the director's vision, the energy and intent of the other actors, the audience, is all filtered through the sum total of the actors' experiences, their own navigating the gaps in their life, their own authenticity position, their own personal expectations, their worldview, their learning, their beliefs, their disappointments, their physical traits, their voice, their point of view. That's what goes into it. So that's how you shrink that gap. You call on all that stuff. That's a lot of stuff. That fills a lot of gap, and it all gets anchored to the as if. And once you find that as if, it all works. I'll have to do some episodes on the actor and the actor's craft, which is doing. Acting is a verb, as Lillian Hellman said. So it's really hard to sit statically behind a microphone and talk about the craft of acting. The last thing I want to talk about, there's another thing I hand wrote on my notes here. I think the biggest gap that we have right now in life and creators is this technology, what they call artificial intelligence, which doesn't look intelligent, but is certainly artificial. And we talked a lot about this, myself and the students at Chapman University. We needed to, because it's driving everything we all do now. The gap between pure human creation and pure synthetic creation. What is that amalgam going to look like? And they asked me some questions, one student in particular. How do you use AI? How do you see yourself using AI? And it's like I always tell you, right now I use it for research. Amalgamation of stuff saves some time. You still got to do a lot of cross-checking, but at least it's all there in a piece in some kind of package, and then you can do your thing. It's better than reading 50 articles, for hours and hours and pulling the stuff out. But creativity, I'm still not sold on it. It's still highly problematic. I told him I really don't know It's foolish to just take a completely hard stance against and say never. Right now, I don't see it. In my creativity, I have not seen any kind of safe opportunities between copyright and some of the principles of how it's going to make my work any better. And I recently saw a photo that somebody posted on social media where they used AI, and there are some glaring errors. That's them, but there are some glaring errors in the physiology that we know that this stuff can really be detrimental rather than helpful. So anyway, there you go, with 10 seconds to spare. So I want to wish you all a really good night. I'll be back next week. Um, Appreciate your time. Really good guests coming up in a lot of different fields, from a Route 6 luminary, Route 66 luminary, to someone who talks about lost time and lost knowledge. Some very big spiritual issues. A new book that's coming out with a return guest. The book is out. I'm waiting for it to arrive so I can read it and talk intelligently about it. Do a review. Have an actor, writer, director, doing film, doing cool stuff, gonna come on the show. So there you go. My hour is up. Everybody have an excellent night.